There's a lot of recipes for don don noodles on the internet, many of which were created by people far more capable than myself of transcribing for an online audience the steps it takes to prepare what is, at the end of the day, a relatively nuanced Chinese noodle dish. But I'm going to show you the quick and dirty version, a method I would argue is quicker and dirtier than 99% of the meals on Earth that don't involve either an air fryer or a Grubhub account. I'm talking 4 ingredients here, 3 of which can sit in your cabinet or fridge for months, if not years, just waiting for you to be hungry and lazy one day. And then once that's done, we're gonna chef it up a little. Nothing crazy, just enough to have some fun and use a couple extra ingredients to get a little more return on our flavor investment for hardly any additional effort. The idea here is that you don't necessarily have to choose between something that is authentic and something that is simple. I think there's a wide spectrum between these 2 points, and working through the lens of don don noodles, I want to show you some of the ways to strike a balance between them, to whatever extent you're interested in doing so. But before we get to all that, let's get the easy one out of the way just so you people know I'm serious. Heat a nonstick pan over medium, optionally with a little neutral oil, and start boiling some water. Drop 100 grams or a smash burger patty-sized ball of ground pork in the pan and start breaking it up with a spatula or wooden spoon, adding maybe half a teaspoon's worth of salt. Once the water's boiling, drop in 50 grams of fresh Chengdu-style noodles and cook for 2 minutes or until the time recommended on the package. You could also do spaghetti here. It's really not that different of an end result, but you'd have to start boiling them ahead of time. But if you live near a good Asian supermarket, odds are you can find fresh noodles just as easily. They call these Oriental spaghetti on the package, but I'm not gonna do that. Then grab a bowl. Add a big heaping spoonful of tahini and top it with an even bigger, more heaping spoonful of chili crisp, taking care to include lots of the chili oil in said spoonful. Grab some tongs and layer your noodles on top, trying and likely failing to do the back and forth noodle thing you've seen online. Ideally, the noodles carry with them a decent amount of water, which will help thin out and emulsify the sauce, but reserve some from the pot just in case. Top the noodles with your ground pork and you're done. That's it. Mix it all together and tuck in. That's all you have to do. Genuinely, it doesn't get any easier than this, and it's delicious. We could just be done now, but I gotta be this legitimate YouTube food content guy now, and you gotta do more than that. I got lulled into this false sense of security by people on TikTok who have attention span of a now I gotta learn how to focus a camera and light a kitchen and do all this shit so I can get a sponsor from Athletic Greens or get the wok from Made In. That's all I really want is the wok, honestly. Whatever. So this works for a couple reasons. The first is that chili crisp is delicious, and with this recipe you get to eat a bunch of it. A lot of people swear by Lao Gan Ma, the godmother herself. I certainly use it more than any other chili crisp. It's not because I love it so much, and I really don't want to give you the impression I'm one of those people, just that so many other ones I've tried aren't nearly as good. To me, it's the ratio of crunchy soybeans and all that other stuff in Lao Gan Ma that sets it apart from the rest. It makes for a much more enjoyable experience from a textural perspective, in my opinion, than just something with oil and chili and sesame seeds. If all you got is chili oil rather than chili crisp, I'd suggest supplementing with fried shallots for that added bite. Regardless of what chili crisp you use, what I do recommend usually is to buy it in smaller jars, because the chili oil goes rancid quicker than you'd think, and the batches have a tendency to be somewhat inconsistent, at least as far as Lao Gan Ma is concerned. That obviously is not what I've done here. I guess when I was at the store, I thought the big jars would look better on camera, and in the end that didn't really matter because half the shots are out of focus anyway, and I kept switching the f-stop on accident, which is why some of the shots are randomly darker than others. I'm working on that. We're getting closer. The other reason this works is the tahini. It's just sesame paste, the same thing they use in the authentic version, which you are of course free to use in its place. But I've found that the viscosity of most store-bought tahini is easier to work with than store-bought sesame paste, which tends to be thicker and harder to emulsify in the bowl. But let's say you got a little more time and wouldn't mind chefing it up a little bit just for fun. The beauty of this recipe is it allows for a high degree of verticality, meaning if you invest a little more effort, you can get a result that's slightly more complex and, I might even say, approaching something authentic. Now, to be clear, I do not argue that this is, nor am I interested in showing you something you could call authentic don don noodles. Other channels have and will continue to do that sort of thing better than I. But as a home cook, what I am interested in is synthesizing shortcuts you can take while cooking with authentic-ish choices that pay the reverence due to the original dish. You'll see what I mean. The first thing I do is chop my pork up from scratch. The reason for that, aside from the simple fact that a whole boneless pork shoulder from the grocery store will be cheaper and likely fresher than the stuff you can buy pre-ground, is that the texture will more closely resemble what you'd find in a non-Western bowl of noodles. Of course, hamburger meat-sized bits work just as well and taste just as good, but something worked over with a cleaver or blitzed in a food processor is more accurate and, if I were marketing this on a restaurant menu, more emblematic of the artisanal, rustic quality of Chinese street food. If you're getting your artisanal rustic quality from the Cuisinart like I am, make sure to put your chunks in the freezer for 15 minutes first for better results. I use pork shoulder because the leftovers are a little more versatile for my kitchen needs than the traditional option, which is, to my knowledge, pork belly. But as I said, Don Don Noodles is a street food, so if you go to Szechuan and hit up 10 different stalls, you might get 10 different types of pork and 10 different sauces and 10 different toppings and so on. I mean, I assume. I haven't been to China. Would love to go. Patreon link in bio, or you can Venmo me a lump sum. I'm at Blackhawks_fan. I signed up early. So once we've got our pork sorted, we might as well throw together a quick marinade, something that only has to sit for 10, maybe 20 minutes max. A little salt, a little sugar, a little dark soy sauce, mostly for color, a little black vinegar, and some starch. I've got potato starch here, but corn works just as well. Sometimes if I'm in the mood, I add ground up Sichuan peppercorns that I've lightly toasted in a hot pan, but that's a base your chili crisp likely has covered, so consider it more optional than the other optional stuff. I will say though, pre-ground Sichuan pepper, like every other pre-ground spice, is radically more muted in its defining characteristics, namely the signature mouth-numbing sensation you get from eating it. Especially if you've never had proper Szechuan food from a restaurant, I'd encourage you to spike your noodles with it just for the experience. The first time I had it, I thought I was dying. Like literally, if you have a food allergy, it triggers a similar feeling on your tongue, on the edges. Like I assumed I'd eaten peanuts by mistake. It was crazy, but I had, so, you know, I was fine. Some people add sesame oil to their marinade. I do not, because there's plenty in the chili crisp. Same goes for the MSG. It's like the fourth ingredient in chili crisp. You'll get more than enough. Use your judgment here, of course. Cooking non-Western food can be intimidating because of the variety of alternative ingredients, but getting too excited and letting the pendulum crash in the other direction is no good either. For example, in my original video recipe, I added Chinese 5-spice powder to the pork in the pan for no other reason than, frankly, its Chineseness. Although I rarely feel compelled to limit myself based on what others deem authentic, I think it's a good practice to consider what's going into your food, lest every kitchen sink noodle dish you make at home blend together in a homogeneous mixture of gochujang and miso paste that would make even the New York Times cooking section blush. Anyway, let's get to frying. Heat a pan over medium and pour in a tablespoon or 2 of neutral oil. After it's hot, toss in 1 or 2 Chinese chilies. In this case, I have these chow tons I got from the store, but you can skip this if you don't have them, or use our bowl if you can't find anything Chinese but still want to feel included. I don't full-throatedly endorse the replacement of the Chinese chili because what we're trying to accomplish here more than anything else is the accumulation of a distinct flavor through the use of appropriate ingredients. But I can't stop you, and we're dumping Laoganma on this anyway. Next step in building the flavor, pickled mustard and green. So this is a fun one. In theory, it's as easy as going to your Chinese grocery store and buying a bag. But in practice, of course, it's not necessarily that simple. For one thing, you have to have a Chinese grocery store near you. And notice I'm saying Chinese, not just Asian. I haven't found this at any of the Korean spots near me. I had to drive all the way down to Chinatown, which was fun. I like Chinatown, but the first time I tried, I ended up coming home with pickled mustard stem, which, although they're tonally similar in the Chinese language, is completely different. Still good, but not what we're after here. The wise wife on the package instructed me to soak the mustard greens in water for half an hour first, and I'm not one to dismiss the wisdom of someone's wife. Once they've soaked, drain them and give them a few runs over with your knife. Remove the chilies from your oil and replace with the mustard greens, stirring until the aroma intensifies. From there, add your marinated pork and proceed as before. Once the noodles are done cooking this time, however, consider rinsing them very briefly to take off some of the starch and accompanying slime. Oh, Paula, oh, come here. We just got a cat and she's been avoiding me all day, but she just came down. I think she thinks it's dinner time. Shit. Paula. Hey, come here, baby. Hey, come here. Oh, there we go. This is Paula. She's been very rude to me lately, but I forgive her. All right, I'll see you. All right, where were we here? Once the noodles are done cooking this time, however, consider rinsing them very briefly to take off some of the starch and accompanying slime. There's more than enough going on in the sauce to get it to latch on to your noodles without all that, believe me, though you'll still want water involved for the aforementioned emulsification purposes. Assemble your bowl as before, then garnish with thinly diced green onions and, what the hell, an extra splash of soy sauce. And I mean, it's just so good. Like, I made probably 6 bowls of this stuff when I was writing the recipe and shooting everything. And I ate every single one, which is not good, honestly, because the macros on this are not great. It's a lot of oil and fat and carbs. Usually I'm sick of whatever I'm making by the time I'm done. I'm not gonna have a Spanish tortilla for another calendar year if I can help it, but I don't know, man, this just like, it hits every time. So hopefully, in addition to a nice little recipe, you also took the time to consider what you could call the spectrum of authenticity. If you like the video, why don't you go ahead and share it with a friend? And if you're wondering about the music, well, I got the rights to this song for the paella videos I did during a free trial to Adobe Stock, and I didn't want to sign up for a full subscription. So get used to it, I guess. Thanks for watching.